Hello, I'm here to talk to you today about paper. Yes, the very same paper that you write, draw, eat, cut your friends with. It's very important for an artist to understand the paper and the fibers they use. I think Mary can explain more.
Yeah. One of the more common questions that people ask me is, Mary, what kind of paper do you use to make your paintings? And the paper is very important, especially if you're working with a medium like watercolor. Okay. This is computer printer paper. It's flimsy, it's floppity, and it's not very good for painting watercolor with. I did start learning to paint watercolor on this though, just having fun and playing around with it. The only problem is it can't handle a lot of water and the paint can't do what it was designed to do as watercolor paint. That said, it's really great for just sketching and doodling or drawing. Like, there's no rules saying you can't use printer paper, especially considering the fact that it's probably the most easily accessible piece of paper you have. This is watercolor paper. You hear that? It's a bit thicker. This is designed to hold a lot of water, and therefore the watercolor paints can do what they're meant to do on it. And this is Bristol board. The little is a bit higher pitched than the watercolor paper. It's not as thick. This is really good for doing inks on it or drawing. It can handle some washes and water, not as well as the watercolor paper, but it still does some really cool stuff. So these are the two primary papers that I use for my paintings. If you're seeing me do something with a lot of ink or a mixture of ink and watercolor, like the crazy cat lady painting, that's what I was using, Bristol board. If you're watching me paint something that's just watercolor with no inks or mostly watercolor, something like the robot dinosaur escaping the city, this is what I'm painting on. So those are the two main papers that I use, Bristol board and watercolor paper. If you want to get some of your own, you can find them at any of the big art stores like Blix, Utrecht. Also, shop around for local art stores. There might be one in your neighborhood that you never really even noticed. I usually buy my papers in packets like these, and people ask me, what brand do you prefer? This is Strathmore because it was on sale. There's also this bee paper that is supposed to be very environmentally friendly. I need to investigate that because that sounds very intriguing. There's a whole lot of other companies out there too. And yes, paper packets can range in prices. There's some really nice expensive papers, and then there's some really cheapo papers. If you're just starting out, you don't have to get the fancy expensive supplies. These supplies are your training wheels. You're going to be practicing on them. You're going to be making mistakes and throwaway paintings. So there's no need to invest so much financially. Yes, art paper is expensive. That's why many artists are broke, because your supplies cost money. However, there are companies and paper brands out there that do student grade packets. I got this whole giant pile of watercolor paper. It's student grade, so it's not as good, but you get a whole lot of it, and it's honestly a good step in the right direction and a great material to practice on.
Paper.
And of course, here's your Friday doodle based on your suggestions. This week's doodle is a mashup of Tim Burton meets Lisa Frank. What? Every Friday I'm going to be doing a doodle based on the previous video. It could be anything from the video, a word, a phrase, a gesture, anything, an idea even. If you have a demand for the doodle, just leave it in the comments below. Also, don't forget to check out my Twitter and my Facebook at Mary Doodles, and you can leave any of your drawing suggestions there.
Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next week. Bye!